So this is on right now. It's not muted. Is this? I don't hear anything.
Are you amidst the meeting?
I'm in the meeting. No one else is in the meeting yet.
Talk and see.
If you registered with the dietary institution, you were given a card at check-in at registration. You'll need to show that card to the server so they can get the right thing. They just want to know once they see that. If you're having trouble scanning the QR codes in the sessions that you're in, find your host, or you can call up the registration table and we have the QR codes there as well. Signing into each session you attend will help us get follow-up information out to everybody, and surveys and let the presenters get some feedback. So we really appreciate it if you're scanning for every session. Again, if you're struggling with QR codes, find your room code or come up to the screen field. And then we put some index cards on the tables for the customers. If you have questions, write them on there and they will be answered that way. Oh, what? Oh. There are vendors and exhibitors downstairs in the lower level. If you've been downstairs for a breakout session, those are on the left. If you go to the right, you'll find the vendor tables. There's also a coffee and water station right there. So if the line is long here, you can hop on down there to those. If you parked in the parking garage that's attached to the hotel and you're not an overnight guest, you'll need to bring your ticket to the front counter and you'll get the conference rate code for that. It's $5 to pay at the counter, and then you will get out of the garage using your ticket. Are you guys ready? All right. Hello again. What a happy sounding room. It's wonderful. I did speak this morning, but I want to reintroduce myself. I'm Christy Yoakum. I'm the chair of the Lancaster County Commission. We also have a couple of other county commissioners here today. Commissioner Bass and Commissioner Anderson. And we're all glad to be here because this is for Lancaster County. So excited though about our keynote speakers, about this program we're about to start. In my nonprofit work, another hat that I wear in the community, I had the pleasure to work with sisters Lacey, Lamar, and Amber Ruffin a while back. They had recently written their first book, You'll Never Believe What Happens to Lacey. And in my opportunity work, we work to build inclusive communities where everyone feels they belong. And we can't get there without talking about racism, without recognizing interpersonal and systemic racism. So this first best-selling book was a great impetus for that discussion. We were able to have discussions in communities across the state. We culminated a series of book clubs with a Zoom with Lacey and Amber during COVID. And as my 13-year-old Black granddaughter said, they trick you into learning while you're laughing if you read this book. If you haven't read it, I strongly encourage it. You'll never believe what happened to Lacey. Crazy stories about racism. And it's very appropriate for these Nebraska-born sisters to be speaking with us here today. Lacey Lamar worked in the healthcare and human services field for more than 25 years. 13 of those was working with troubled youth in her community. She loves to volunteer her time with marginalized people any way she can, and still continues to live in Nebraska with her family and her 130-pound Great Dane, Izzy. Amber Ruffin is a writer, executive producer, and host of the Emmy and Critics' Choice and WGA Award-nominated series Amber Ruffin show on Peacock, which is a favorite in my family. She is also an Emmy and WGA award-winning, award-nominated writer and performer for NBC's Late Night with Seth Meyers. And by the way, she was the first African-American female to write for a late night talk show. And you can add Tony Award nominee to that resume. She co-wrote the Broadway hit musical Some Like It Hot, currently playing on Broadway. And she's currently working on a revival of The Wiz, set to open on Broadway in 2024. Lacey and Amber recently released their newest book, The World Record Book of Racist Stories, which I'm eager to buy and read. Because Lacey and Amber have business in New York City that they need to attend to, I'm sure that maybe there's more fantastic news on the horizon. Amber Boykins is joining us here in person to take this conversation with Lacey, Lamar, and Ruffin. Iona is currently the Economic Institution and Workforce Development Administrator at the Omaha Public Schools and brings with her a wealth of experiences, including work with the Anti-Defamation League and the Omaha Community Foundation. And I will just turn this over to you.
So I'm going to do a podium so that everyone can see, since this hopefully it all black and over. Big ups to Barney over there. Hey, Barney. Barney's the dog.
There we go.
Okay. So good afternoon. Thanks so much for inviting us to be a part of today's and this week's Nebraska Community Aid and Juvenile Justice Conference. We're honored to be here to host this conversation. I should mention that this area is near and dear to my heart. I served on the committee for Douglas County a few years back, and so I really appreciate all of the work that all of you are doing throughout the state. My name is Iona Boykins. I'll be moderator for today's conversation with Amber and Lacey. So as you know, Amber and Lacey collaborated to write the comical but actual accounts of both You'll Never Believe What Happened to Lacey and their most recent book, The World Record Book of Racist Stories. The books have been described as a collection of hilarious intergenerational anecdotes full of absurd detail about everyday experiences of racism. Now, before I jump into the interview, I want to set collective visioning for the discussion, or a community of agreement of sorts in which to guide the conversation. So when holding difficult conversations, there's a certain level of understanding and commitment that must occur. And I know that I am preaching to the choir because all of you probably hold these difficult conversations on a daily basis. So the sister authors may examine some topics that may be considered to be a little controversial or uncomfortable. So let's try to create space for multiple truths. So seeking understanding of truths that differ from maybe your own, or celebrate and embrace the different perspectives. Assume best intentions. So we all come from different experiences and knowledge. So assume the best intentions from these interactions as opposed to assigning blame or assuming ill will. Recognize that intent is different from impact. The things that we say or do may have negative impact on others despite the actual intent. So words do matter. And then last but not least, just being the sheer nature that we're at a conference centered learning and growth. So this work is sometimes uncomfortable and uncertain. We may not always know all the answers and arrive at a neat and tidy resolution, but remember that we're all here to learn and grow, individually as well as collectively. So with that, now that order of business out of the way, in the immortal words of Arsenio Hall, let's get busy. So.
We're the only ones that did that.
There you go, guys. So, Lacey and Amber, what motivated you to write the two books? Who wants to take it first?
I'll take it first. So Amber came to me and said, they want me to write a book about myself, but I don't want to do that. She was like, would you like to write a book? I know you have all these stories. And I said, absolutely. I already have everything written down because I journal a lot. And specifically, I would journal at work when something racist happened to me that I had to go to HR and make my official complaint about. So I had journals and journals and journals of all these stories. And so the book literally wrote itself. Amber and I sat down one day and took all my journals and all the stories, not all of the stories, but a lot of the stories came from that. And that's how it started.
Good stuff. Well, obviously we know that after Amber's recent winning of 4 Tony Awards this past Sunday, you're a big applause. Amber, why did you decide to use humor to tell most of your stories?
Well, the reason we wrote the book was because it was already written, really. All we did was write down, those stories that had become legend in the family. All of our favorite, funniest stories of racism. And, to us, racism isn't funny, but it also very is. So we just decided, I don't think anyone, who isn't standing in racism, I don't think they realize the volume. And I think we said that in the intro of the book. One of the reasons why we wrote this book is the sheer volume. Maybe you'll believe each individual story and you won't. But if you don't, you certainly won't believe the sheer volume of stories. And I think once you sit down with only the funny stories that have happened to one person who is nowhere near the end of their life, then you realize, oh, this is quite heavy.
Just the sheer number of microaggressions that probably all of us out in the audience, me on the stage, probably encounter on a daily or weekly basis, right? So, and I'll let you both decide on which one wants to answer. What are some of the favorite stories from the book? I know that you talk about, your family gets together and has these conversations about experiences that are just mind-blowing, right? What are some of your favorite stories from either book?
I think my favorite story is always when Lacey went to pay for something with a check, and her checks were Black History Month, Black History heroes, like heroes of Black history. So it was Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. And then one of them was Harriet Tubman. So she wrote out a Harriet Tubman check and gave it to the cashier. And the cashier took the check that has Harriet Tubman on it, not like a rendering of what Harriet Tubman would look like now, or a different picture of Harriet Tubman than exactly what you're thinking. Ain't but like 2 pictures of Harriet Tubman. So she hit this check with Harriet Tubman on it. And the woman goes, I didn't know you could get your picture on checks. That picture was Lacey.
Here I am, everybody.
So, yeah. So it's fun.
Everybody's face is just like looking like, oh my God, you can't see it, but instead of like, oh, that's pretty. No, yeah, obviously. Right?
It's pretty funny.
So my checks have like Thor and Incredible Hulk. So if I got like if somebody was the, yeah.
I didn't know you were the Incredible Hulk.
Green, don't make me angry. So what was your writing process, Lacey? How did you go about, thinking through and conceptualizing all these different stories that are that make up part of this kind of an anthology of experiences?
Oh, our writing process, I think, was pretty easy. We literally already had them written out. So we just went through them and with a glass of wine in my mother's living room, I need to say. That's part of the process. And then we just discussed on how it was going to work. And then Amber really came up with the idea to make it a conversation, because when you read the book, it's just us talking like this and silly. That's all we do, guys. We're
Yeah,
two
it's
silly
bad.
ladies and just joking with each other. And just telling our stories as if you were just sitting in the living room with us listening.
So hopefully there's never any online purchases. I personally cannot consume any kind of adult libations and try to purchase things online because I buy multiple, unfortunately, but so
But
hopefully.
there's also an audio version to both of our books, and people say they love them both.
So I've heard people say that it's even funnier when the two of you are basically kind of ad-libbing and adding to the stories on the audio. So
Yeah.
I'm sure that's pretty fun too, to be able to verbalize instead of just see the prose on paper.
Mhm.
So Amber, you shared different stories for several nights in a row about your run-ins with the law and with law enforcement you encountered in your life throughout late night with Seth Meyers. How did that segment come out, and how do you feel it's important to tell those stories, and how can you share some of those encounters, or can you share some of those encounters?
When George Floyd was murdered, we were still on the air on Late Night with Seth Meyers, like it wasn't an off week or anything. So we knew we had to address it. And I wrote a sketch that addressed it. And then the very next day, it was clear that a sketch wouldn't cut it. Like it had so shifted the point of view of all Americans that I could no longer do a sketch. So then I wrote a rant, like I'm so angry, here's me as a person kind of ripping apart the situation. And then it shifted again, so much so that wouldn't fly. So then I thought the only way for us to address this is for me to actually say all of my to give an actual account of a run-in I had with the police. And it became the right thing to do because people didn't know that when you're Black and you get stopped by the cops, for me personally, it's 90% of the time you have to talk them down from being at a 10. Like I've never been pulled over by a calm human being in my entire life. I've never been stopped by a police officer who was calm in any way. I've only been stopped by a human being who was ready with his hand on a gun to end my life for laws I've never broken. So, that's not true. I was going 4 miles over the speed limit in one story, but then in the rest of the stories, I was just walking down the street, living life. So I don't think people know that a lot. And like, especially with Black women, I found you have to talk them down like you are an abused wife. Like they are so angry that that any false anything would send them into a rage, which, could end your life, blah, blah, blah. The story I chose the first night is when I was pulled over by a cop when I was 19. I was a kid, and I had my music loud, and I think that's what made him angry. But
What song were you listening to?
I was listening to Busta Rhymes. I couldn't tell you the song, but I know that was deep in my Busta Rhymes era. So I had my music up, and I had on a hat. So
I don't think he thought I was a girl. So it was a speed trap. And I'm terrified going 4 miles over the speed limit. Because I was in Council Bluffs. Sorry, if you're Black and you live in Omaha, you fear Council Bluffs because you think that their racism is off the charts, and it is, but so's ours. So the guy gets me in a speed trap, and he is screaming obscenities at me to pull over. Instead of saying, you pull over, he's, you bleepity bleep and bleeper, you pull the bleep over, pull the bleeping car right. He's screaming at me. So I pull over. I'm certain this man is gonna kill me because he's so angry, and he's angry at nothing. So then there is no, there's nothing I can do to fix your anger if you're just angry. So he pulls me over and he sees that I'm a girl and that I'm crying. And then he just drops it like that and is no longer angry. And it's like, okay. All right. But if I wasn't a little girl, I'm pretty sure that anything could have happened. So, I also live in that luxury too. But so then I told that story the first night. And then I said, and that's not my only story. I could tell stories for 2 more weeks, minimum. So then we opened the show with that story, and then we opened the show with a different story about interactions of mine with cops that were almost exactly like that one. So, and at the end of that week, I was like, I'm not done. We're just out of time for this, So, unfortunately, those are my and almost every Black person I know's interactions with police on, the majority of them.
Kind of centered around the talk, right? So,
yeah.
Mhm. So have a lot of people contacted you all about the book, either one of you? And what kind of feedback have you gotten about both books?
I was ready to get the worst feedback ever. But I'm also one of those people that I don't care. I'm telling the truth about what happened. So if you feel any sort of way, I'm sorry, but this is what really happened in my life. But I got almost all positive. I got messages from people that were in the book that did some of this behavior. One lady, and this is very funny, messaged me, and she's kind of rambling. She's messaging me on Facebook, and she goes, I was reading the book, and then I thought it was me, but then I was like, oh no, that wasn't me. And I messaged her back, and I said, yeah, that was you. You did that. And I went through a detailed story of, that was you. And then she was like, it was me. And then she apologized. And I'll also, but I still to this day, I do love it when people come up to me and say, I read your book and I do that. I'm doing this behavior and I'm going to stop. I had a teacher come up to me in a restaurant. And it could have been with you. I could have been sitting with you. I can't remember. But a lady came up to me and said, was it you? She said, I do this. I have one Black student in my class and I'm constantly touching her hair and constantly talking about how she's Black. And she goes, I'm going to stop doing that. And she taught like 4th and 5th grade. So I'm just like, who the hell that this young girl was going through? But she goes, I see my stupidity and I do all of this stuff all the time and I'm going to stop. Hey, that's enough for me right there. But people come up and say things like that to me all the time.
But it also, like, if on the rare occasion, some people are mad that racism exists and that's not really what they're mad at. What they're mad at is their part in it. I think there's like, everyone is guilty of it. Like, I'm probably less guilty of being racist towards Black people, but I'm certainly, I don't know a person who's not racist on some level. That doesn't exist. Like being transphobic, homophobic, that's all of us. That's everybody. Everybody who's my age has certainly said and done probably some really severe stuff. And it's not, and And if I understand that that happened to me, a totally reasonable human being, you can see the humanity in people who are racist. I think it's more of an action that you're doing than a, and a world in which you operate than a what's in your hearts. You know what I mean? And I think people don't know that people who are calling out racism see that, but everybody sees it. We see it. We're all people making mistakes all the time. Look at
So
this.
sometimes we don't always think about like how all of those are interconnected also. And that all of the isms tend to connect in some way, shape, or form. And so if you have preconceived notions about one person, those you never know what's coming right back at you, just based on other stereotypes and beliefs. So most definitely. I want to go ahead and I'm going to hold off on some of the questions that I'm asking. And what I'd like to do is if there are questions that are that folks have in the audience that you would like to ask, either I can run the mic or it looks like Jenny can run the mic, or we can also pick up those cards if you have specific questions that you wanted to ask that are on the cards.
So I haven't had a chance to read the new book yet, the World Records book. How did you get those stories? Where did those stories come from?
Where did the stories come from? The new book? Was that the question, Yana?
The new where did the stories come from that are in the new book?
Well, I still live in Omaha, so these things are still happening to me. Be ready for book 3. And also we use stories from our family. So first, most of the stories were just about me, but now they're everyone in our whole family, my mother, my father, do I have 4 sisters? I have 3 sisters and 1 brother. And then, people in the community.
I always tell people they better watch out, including myself, because you never know if you're going to end up in their next book.
Yana's got a whole 4 chapters. No, I'm just joking. She does not. She's a wonderful person.
I vote pause all the time, right? Anyone else have specific questions, those burning questions that you want to ask? Okay, I'll let that marinate for a few minutes. I'll go on back to my little set of questions. Lacey, how would you say you encounter something racist in Omaha? And then Amber, how often do you encounter something racist in New York? What does that look like on both scales between the Midwest and the East Coast?
Mine happen all the time.
Those microaggressions.
Microaggressions. And sometimes not microaggressions. I have a mixture. Macro and micro. I have a mixture of aggressions that happen to me. And I also, I'm gonna say something a lot of people don't like. I don't even like that term because micro, what's micro? Micro can be terrible. You're just saying it in a softer way. Or you're doing, so yeah, I have aggressions all the time in Omaha. And it's weird because it will affect me when I come to New York, especially when I first started coming to New York. I remember being in a store with Amber and I said, oh, there's something in the bottom of my purse, but I can't dig in it because then security is going to be on. Amber goes, no one cares about you. No one is looking at you. Security is not following you. And for people that are out in the audience right now, that's a thing. You don't want to open up your purse in Von Mar and dig in it because someone will be on you, looking at you like that and following you in any store, Walmart, Walgreens. So I was like, I can stop and put my purse on this shelf and dig in it and get what I need at the bottom. And they don't care about me. There's Black people everywhere. That is a thing in Omaha. That's a thing that you feel when you walk into a store. Immediately you feel the eyes on you and you see the person following you. And sometimes I run around the store for fun just to tire them out. That's a thing. So that's life in Omaha.
On the other side of the country, no, in Manhattan, it is absolutely not that. And it's so bad. And I forget it. I forget how bad it is. And then I'll, because in New York, especially where I work on a television show that, calls out racism. So everybody who is in my literal workplace is working to put anti-racist stuff on the air. So even accidentally, it would have seeped in by now. But they're human beings who chose to work on this show knowing its message. So I'm gonna go ahead and say almost nothing, like nothing comes to mind, for a million years. And then I'll go out with Lacey in Omaha and I will have forgotten what it is like there. And I mean, there's a huge difference. There's a huge difference. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. So we have a couple of questions that have come in. One is about the Writers Guild. And we'll see if you're able to speak to this. I'm considering if you are on strike, would you speak on labor organizing and how it's failed racial justice, but also its potential?
Ooh, I mean, I would if I knew anything about it. Especially now because we're going, we're picketing and going to rallies and stuff, and you're learning at such an alarming rate. But, I am still a person who, I mean, I have a lot of jobs, but my main job, that's gone right now. So it's odd that, now I used to be just a writer on television, but now I've, produced shows and executive produced shows, and I saw the money. I saw it. So I know the distribution of it, and I know that it's insane. So I'm more shocked at the bald, greediness of it all than I am, well versed in the ins and outs of it. But I just always think that not organizing is crazy, and especially New York everybody is gilded down, and it is so. I mean, I just don't understand. Like, remember a couple of years ago when those two guys from Amazon organized Amazon, and people lost their minds, and I had forgotten that. Yeah, there are whole places who work so hard to keep people from organizing. But I guess the answer is yes. Yeah, I would, but I'd have to do some research.
Well, I think by the sheer nature of your work, you were trying to dismantle some of that, whether it be the writings that you've done with Seth Meyers, or even with Black Lady Sketch, right? So, yeah, I mean, all of those are, you're starting to become one of those champions in those positions to actually be able to dismantle some of this work just based on the sheer nature of who you are. So, I have another question. You may or may not be able to answer this one. Amber, you recently co-founded productions company Straight to the Cards. Will you be bringing both books to the big screen?
There are no plans to bring the books to the big screen. And if there were other plans, we would not be allowed to say.
But inquiring minds want to know if there are other things that they should be looking out for. And if not, we cannot disclose anything, then that's fine too.
Amber can't, but call me later. I'm a blabbermouth. Just joking. Don't call me.
Well, any other any questions that I'm seeing out in the audience that I have not gotten to? Uh-oh, there's a request for the donut story
Yay!
from
The
Krista.
donut story is the best. I know a minute ago I said Harriet Tubman was my favorite story. But this minute, donut story is my favorite story. Okay, this is what happened. So Lacey is working at retirement home in outside of Omaha, in small town, Nebraska. And she, oh yeah, because it's Omaha, they're gonna know where it is.
Doesn't matter.
So someplace. And she's working at this facility, and someone comes in and brings the most delicious donuts she's ever had. Best donuts of her life. And she goes, where did these donuts come from? And they go, oh, it came from this place. She goes, great, I'm gonna bring those same donuts in. And that same day, or not that same day, the next day, a Black lady gets hired at work. So Lacey's like, this lady is young and, you know, very confident and smart and capable. She's not going to be able to put up with the racism that is happening at this job. She's going to quit. They're going to say something freshly racist to her and she's going to get out of here. But so before she does that, she must taste the donuts. So Lacey goes to leaves work early, or leaves to get to work early so that she can stop by and get donuts and get to work. She also has to pay her rent. So she goes, she pays rent. She goes to the donut shop. She gets there like that, even though Lacey gets lost all the time. She's lost right now. Look at her. So she gets to the donut place and she walks in.
You want me to keep?
Yeah.
So I walk in and the place is really scary. It's ramshackle. It's got some old kitchen table and all these different chairs at this big old kitchen table, and you got to kind of go around it to go talk to the people. So I go up to the counter and their faces. I don't know if you've ever been in a store or place where they don't want you to be there. They did not want me in there. They were like, and I asked them, I asked for like a dozen donuts and they're like, we don't have any right now.
It's 8 a.m. You're a donut shop. You have donuts.
I can see them making the donuts. And that's your greeting? Your greeting is like, no. So I said, oh, I'll just wait. So I'm waiting for them to make the donuts. And I know everybody's saying, why did you just leave? Guys, I needed the donuts. They were that delicious. They're delicious. So they're making the donuts. As I'm standing there, a regular walks in. I'm standing and he comes up and goes, that's my chair.
Lacey is not sitting in a chair, but she is standing too close to his favorite chair for his liking. So Lacey goes, go on and have a seat. Because, you know, one, this man is 1,000 years old. And two, because of her proximity to him, this is going to make the two women behind the counter speed up and get her the donuts so she can leave. And they do. They go, do you want these donuts or not? So then Lacey comes up, she's ready to pay for the donuts. She takes out her credit card and they go, we don't take cards. And Lacey is gutted. She waited all this time. She's waited like 20 minutes at this point for nothing. And she's going to leave with no donuts. She's mad. And then she goes, do you take checks? And without thinking, these idiots go, yes.
Who takes checks anymore?
Who takes checks? And also, if you don't want her to get donuts, just say no. You idiots. But she had just paid rent. So she had her checkbook in her car. She goes to the car, she cuts these pieces of crap, a check, and she what's that?
Harriet Tubman on check.
Oh, Harriet Tubman check. Oh, that would have been good. You should have put that in the book.
That's good. That's good.
So she pays with that check and leaves. And she went through all this trouble so that the Black woman at work could taste the donuts. She gets to work. She tells the Black woman at work, hey, this is what happened at this crazy donut shop. Isn't that nuts? Here, eat these donuts, they're great. The Black lady at work goes, I don't want to eat these donuts. I'm not supporting this store, blah, 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 blah. Like, dang, you're right. You're right. I went through all that trouble. So Lacey goes back to her office, and then later on that day, Tish, we decided to call her Tish. Tish, the Black lady, comes up to Lacey's office and is like, oh my God, I tasted the donuts. They're magnificent. And you know what? Next Friday, I'll bring in the donuts. And that never happens because she almost immediately gets fired because they had a problem with how, because her clothes were too tight. She explained to them the concept of policing Black women's bodies and got fired. The end. But she got to taste the donuts, so it's
Those
happy.
donuts were good, and if you know what donut shop I'm talking about, you know it's true.
So many donut shops.
Mhm.
I don't know any, yeah, you said. We're not gonna get you. Thank you for the donuts.
You're welcome.
All right. So in writing, both of these books, what do you want your audience to know from these books? What do you want them to get out of these both books? Like little nuggets of wisdom.
I want them to understand that if they are doing this behavior, if you know someone who is doing this behavior, if you think someone will act this way, let them have access to this book. It really is a how-to, or maybe a how not. Read this book. And I've had so many people, like I said, tell me I do some of these things. I can't believe I'm doing these things, but I do them all the time. Because this book isn't filled with cross burnings. It's filled with these little things that you are doing to make people's lives hell every day. A lot of these stories in here are my morning meeting work stories. And being the only Black supervisor, Black director in a place, and having to put up with these things, having to swallow them every day. No one's laughing at your slightly racist joke, Fred. No Black person is retelling your story and giggling about it. We're retelling it, but we're retelling about how much of an idiot you are behind your back. I can say it. So all of these behaviors, stop doing them. And if you know someone, your grandma, your granddad, put them in their Christmas stockings.
So you came out with one little nugget of what people can do, but if there was one thing that you would ask of allies within this room, what can folks start doing today to counter some of these little?
Speak up, because we're not the ones that are going to stop racism.
If Black people could have stopped racism, it would be done by now.
Yeah. So you have to, they're allies, you have to be the ones to act and to speak and to stop things from happening.
Yeah, the more comfortable racists are, the worse racism is gonna get. And since 2016, people got real comfortable. So
Yeah.
Yes.
Any other messages from the book?
With that, I'll ask one more time if we have any other questions that are coming from the audience. And, oh, yes. She read the first one. So she is, sorry, I was trying to pay attention and you guys are laughing at me. I was listening and I was actively listening so that I could try to summarize. So with that, she said, thank you for making, you know, these uncomfortable situations that you talked about in the book to be able to recognize some of the things that she might have been doing and saying, oh my gosh, I need to stop doing this. And she just basically said, thank you very much for writing the book. Is yes, helpful tool. And that is a decent summary. Okay.
Well, thank you for getting the book and thank you for reading the book. And that was our goal. We wanted it to be, well, I guess that wasn't our goal. Our goal was to be honest about what was happening and hopefully make other Black people feel comfortable in their terrible workplaces and stuff. But the delightful side effect is that this book is being read by white people and having a good effect on them because it's very it's very fun and funny. And I realize it's weird to call it fun, but you rolling with us, you're gonna have some fun. There's nothing I can do about that. So like I do love it when people read the book and are like, it was an easy read, because I mean, it just stays fascinating because it's just one lady and it happens over and over and over. And then hopefully, you know, you take a step back and go, hey, I certainly must be privy to some of this. And then you look for it in your own life and then you find it. And then hopefully you call it out.
Yeah. Then we look at all the interconnectedness, as you mentioned, about all the other isms. So, you know, I personally want to thank you both for the wonderful conversation. I appreciate the questions that came from the audience and the statements and the accolades, and just I'm happy to have been your virtual conduit in this conversation.
Thank you, Yana.
And let's give Lacey and Amber a big round of applause. And thank you so much for taking time out with the book.
Thank you for having us. Yay.
Thanks for having us. We appreciate it.
Ciao, babies.
Ciao.
Ciao.